Hi there. We need more chosen family. We need chosen brotherhood as gay men in our midlives. A lot of us may not have a strong connection to our family of origin. Some of us do. If you're like me, you have it, but you don't really. You have family, but somehow when you're connected to them, there's a distinction, there's a separation, there's something different. And so this is why chosen family has always been a big part of gay living, right? Some of us were outright rejected by our family of origin in those early years or later years, even. I've talked to men over the last few months who came out later and no longer have access to their kids because of the extreme reaction to them stepping into their personhood, to them being their true and authentic self. So there's a whole range of why there's a need for this chosen brotherhood, not just chosen family, but brotherhood. And if you're fortunate enough to have strong familial connections, family of origin, I applaud you. But we must recognize that that's not the case for many of us. Many of us are estranged in many ways, and this severing of family can have strong impacts for us later on. It can impact how we thrive and survive in relationships. There can be a guardedness, there can be an avoidant tendency. That's certainly been my experience. And so these families of origin are not enough. And frankly, families of origin often have their own internal dynamics anyway. So, in this idea of chosen brotherhood, what am I talking about? Well, this is something that's come late to me. I'm a late bloomer, so I always figure these things out or have my self revelations later than the average guy or peer. Be that late puberty bloomer, the whole thing, right? Finding my dream job later in life, buying my first home later in life. Now, here I am at 61 and recognizing this need for connection with other men in a much more focused way. Um, there's been the superficial connections, the sexual connections over the years, but not the deep, vulnerable kind of sharing connections that we need as humans. We're social creatures, and even if you're an extreme introvert, we still have tendencies of connecting and belonging. And there's four aspects of that that I think are really important to cover. And the first is when we're belonging and we're having a sense of connection and brotherhood with other gay men, there is ideally a sense of being witnessed. Now, I'm talking about this stage in life, post 50. That's really my target here. So a lot of us in our earlier years, it wasn't always being witnessed. Sometimes it was being witnessed in a positive way. Sometimes it was being looked at from a place of that male gaze, which could make a lot of us feel uncomfortable, right? Especially if it was coming at us from older men in those earlier years. But this idea of being witnessed now when we're at a deeper place of authentic beingness, not all of us are going to be there. A lot of us are going to be living the same ways we did in our 20s, 30s, and 40s because we like that. We like the socializing, we like the camaraderie. We're totally good with that. Our lives are fine. And so that's not necessarily, you're not necessarily who I'm talking to. Who I'm talking to are folks who want something a little bit deeper. They're diving deep into this idea of, well, who am I becoming as a 50, 60, 70 something? What is different about me now? And that's not just, oh, I've retired from my job and I'm living, the life of leisure. No, who are we becoming? Because it's ultimately about our beingness is where our true satisfaction comes from. And so when I say being witnessed, so this is the first of the four I'm going to talk about, being witnessed as we blossom into our true and authentic selves at this stage in life, where there's a deeper self awareness, where there's a deeper alignment with soul purpose and soul living. So, what do I mean by that? Well, like I said, it's not the stuff of the previous decades that got us to where we are. And for a lot of us, that's been a totally wonderful ride. But in midlife, most of us are going to experience some kind of yearning for something richer, deeper, more true, and more full. This is that connection to your truer self essence. And if you choose not to go there, that's fine. Not everyone's going to. In the witnessing, we get to see each other. We get to hold space for each other to move into and become this next version of oneself, to become that truer, more authentic, more soul aligned version. And that witnessing is absolutely beautiful. And in doing so, being witnessed and being the witness, we get to connect in a much deeper, more profound way. This isn't superficial stuff. This is about deep human to human connection. So the witnessing is part of our growth. The being witnessed and being able to witness others is part of our growth. It's part of our evolution. The next thing I wanted to talk about is the idea of mutual encouragement. So it's related. As we're going through these metamorphoses and we're changing and we're evolving, things are going to shift. So some relationships from the past we may choose consciously to let go of. And that's not a bad thing, because what served us previously, whether it's on the external level, and some of those friendships fall into that category, we can let go of that, some of that stuff. We aren't using the external as the markers now. It's really an internal audit that we're doing in terms of how am I? How am I with me? And even if you're partnered, there's often this partnered versus single kind of thing. I saw a post yesterday on social media that implied that we should all be partnered, and if we're not, we're broken. Nasty. So whether we're partnered or not, we do need this mutual encouragement, right? And so even in a partnered situation, that may not be there. So how do we arrive at that? Well, it's through the context and the connections that we're making. It's a deepening of those connections. And then we get to encourage each other in our growth. We get to encourage each other as we maybe stumble along and make a few mistakes and question this and become super curious about what's the next decade going to look like? How am I going to show up here? How can I be maybe of service to humanity? All of that ego driven stuff from the 20s, 30s, 40s into our 50s, we can maybe let some of that go and be driven more from this place of serving, of giving back, of being of use to others. And we'll do that in all sorts of different ways. There's no one path to do that. And some of us may choose not to, and that's totally fine. What I'm sharing here is just some contemplations, some ideas for reflection. So as we move into this stage of life and as we move into a chosen brotherhood option, that we want to be encouraging. So a lot of us in our younger years, we weren't so encouraging. We were more critical. That male gaze that I talked about had more of a critical lens. Uh, and some of us may still be doing that, like looking at others and judging and criticizing. That's something we want to sort of move away from in these wisdom years. We want to accept everyone for the choices that they make and who they are, and not project our views, values, and beliefs on them. And so this mutual encouragement is, again, helping to create a container from which we can all grow and blossom and become that best version of ourselves. There's accountability here too. So as we're doing this work, we can have others to be accountable to. We can have those peers, those new evolving friendships where we can show up for them and they can show up for us. We can hold ourselves accountable to who we're becoming by sharing those journeys with them, and asking folks to play that role, to hold ourselves to accountability. If old patterns, old systems are cropping up that don't serve us well, that we've outlived, we've outgrown, then we can check in with others and use that as a means of growth and expansion. Accountability is a great thing. Many of us learned it in our careers. Some of us didn't, but a lot of us did. And so how do we find accountability within these growing and evolving friendships and connections that we're making? This chosen brotherhood to do exactly that. And ultimately, out of all of it, the witnessing, the encouraging, the accountability comes deep and abiding friendship. That's the whole point. We want deep and abiding friendship, friendship that's not based on superficial connections. Friends that we've had for years, we can end up in patterns of communication where we're really not talking about much of anything. And if that floats your boat, excellent. Keep at it, have fun. But if you're wanting that deeper, richer, expansive kind of connection, this is what it's all about. And so at this stage, it can be a little bit harder to make friends, make it new, starting with that connection and acquaintanceship and then moving into friendship. So that needs to be facilitated. And that's something that we're doing here at the Wisdom Trust. We're facilitating deeper connections, stronger communication, richer communication, and developing friendships from new guys that we're meeting. So this is gay men, specific to gay men over 50. So if you're feeling like maybe you need to dive into this a little bit more, maybe you need to be exploring and connecting in new and different ways, maybe you need to be expanding your sense of self by expanding in the context of a supporting and nurturing and loving environment of other gay men. This is chosen brotherhood. This is what it looks like. And from that, we start from that not knowing these people to developing deep, rich connections that will thrive and support us for the rest of our lives. That's what it's all about. This is what wisdom looks like in our elder years, is being chosen brothers for each other. So I'm going to leave you with a reflection. Where in your life do you long for more genuine connection? Not more people, but deeper relationships. So where in your life do you long for more genuine connection? And that's not more people, but deeper relationships. I'll leave you with that. Love to see you in the Wisdom Trust. Talk to you soon.